Welcome everybody to my podcast, Big Little Small Talk. I'm Megan O'Hara-Sullivan and I love to talk, but I also love to listen. If you're new here, welcome. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoy the episode. Hello everyone, welcome to Big Little Small Talk. My guest today is Tyrone Phillips and he is a fire twirler or a fire dancer or a fire spinner. I'm not quite sure. I don't know the difference between the two. Welcome, Tyrone.
Thanks, Megan. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, now we're only new friends. We only met last week, and you said in your spare time you're a fire twirler. So do you say fire twirler or dancer or spinner or what are you?
That's a great question. So fire twirling is a subset of what I like to call flow arts. Basically, anything I can do with fire, people do without fire as well. And the fire twirler bit is a bit of a misnomer, I guess, because often people will see me practicing in the park with this sort of equipment that is you can't set on fire, and I say, oh, I'm a fire twirler, and they say, well, when are you setting it up? And well, this stuff doesn't set on fire, so am I really a fire twirler? But basically, I call myself a fire twirler or a flow artist, I guess. But I've got plenty of other equipment that doesn't set on fire. I've got some LED stuff. I've got some stuff that glows under black light. Lots of bits and pieces, some shiny, sparkly bits.
Well, I want to talk about the LED lights a little bit later on because I gather that that's sort of the latest invention in this art. So how do you get to be a fire twirler?
Usually you find someone or spot someone doing it and ask them to give you a go, essentially. So when I was about 14 or so, I'm 28 now, my mother came home from a second-hand shop with a set of what we call devil sticks, which is two small hand sticks and another larger stick you can bounce between them. Not a fire one that you can't set on fire, and said, give this a go. She found it for $5. And I sort of gave that a go and enjoyed it and practiced with it. And about 3 years later, I moved to a town where there was a group of people who were doing fire twirling, and I thought, I didn't even realize I could get 5 versions of this, and I went up to them and asked if I could give it a go and showed them what I could do, and that's it basically. That's how I got into it.
Right. So I would have imagined that you'd have to go and get a license and get approved and all of that. Is that sort of what happens? Have a resume on whether a letter of recommendation whether you're allowed to be a fire twirler?
Well, it's not exactly a recognized degree or anything. It's certainly, for most people, it's a hobby. So I do professional shows, so I have public liability insurance, I have a safety plan, I have an ABN and everything else. But for most people, it's just a hobby. It's just the same as you don't need a license to do juggling, you don't need a license to play the guitar. It's the same as that, I suppose.
Yes, except
that
you can't damage yourself seriously by juggling or playing the guitar. So I would have thought you'd have to have some sort of safety certificate, or does that just come with your insurance or something?
So if I'm performing in a public space or on someone else's property, then the insurance covers that. Most people sort of just perform in their backyard or just practice at home or in a park or something. Where there's basically no risk of burning anything other than themselves, I suppose. But that's a risk you got to take, I suppose. You don't need to have a license to be a chef and accidentally slice your finger off or anything. So we all have dangerous hobbies, I suppose. But no, that's a fair point. I hadn't really.
Yeah. So I was reading all about Do you wear a costume generally, or when you perform?
Sometimes, yes. I'm looking into getting more costumes, but usually I wear like a nice silk shirt and a vest or a top hat or something, sort of the carnival look, I suppose, carnival goer look. But I've worn body paint before, like bright blue body paint with sort of Celtic swirls and spirals and that sort of thing. I'd love to get something more flowing. A lot of people use a lot of like leather straps and that sort of gear. I guess it sort of works with the I don't know, looks good in with fire around, I suppose.
Well, I was reading particularly that fire twirlers have to be careful not to use any non-synthetic fibres.
Correct.
And you can't even use hairspray.
Yeah, that's correct. Hairspray is a very dangerous thing to have around fire. So natural fibres are definitely the best. Natural fibres burn, which means you can just take them off, whereas synthetic fibres melt, which means if they're on fire, you can't take them off, they'll stick to you, which is very bad. So yeah, leather, silk, cotton, anything like that's really good.
Yeah, and I wouldn't imagine that you'd want anything too flowy and tassely, otherwise you'd accidentally be like a wick. You'd sort of
Yes
set
and no.
yourself on fire.
Definitely. If especially when you're starting out and when you're practicing, you definitely want to be wearing tight sort of fitting clothing. If you're performing and you're confident and you sort of know where the tassels are and where your fire is, it's definitely doable. But it's all comes down to confidence and practice for when it comes down to the style of clothing, I suppose, you're wearing.
Yeah, interesting. So tell me, is fire twirling, dancing, spinning, is it a ceremonial thing, or is it an expression, or is it telling a story, or all of those things?
Absolutely depends on who's doing it. A lot of I think indigenous tribes in the Polynesians, they do fire dancing, and that's very much a tribal sort of thing. I'm not sure about telling a story. Maybe they do. And for some people, it's very much just the shock of it all. The fire breathers, the big booms, the big flames. It's all just a sort of shock show. This is a dangerous thing, and I'm trying to impress you by putting myself in danger, I guess. For some people, it's much more elegant and like a dance, I suppose, like you say. Telling a story is definitely part of it too. Like I've done sort of themed shows. When I was wearing that blue body paint, we had another person dressed up like a Viking and someone else, in a similar sort of costume, and we sort of had this theme and our acts worked into that. We had sort of mock fighting, I suppose, as well. So yeah, it can be whatever you take it to.
Is it? Do you mostly get hired by, say, people maybe corporates or people having a party or something like that, and it's 60th or something, and they say we're having a Viking party? Is that most of your gigs, or what do you mostly do? It's
mostly the more corporate, more public things. So I've done a couple of shows for the council here in Toowoomba for their New Year's Eve festivals. I've done a show out in, I want to say, Miles. They do a fire and water festival every second year, so we go up there. Big public stage stuff. But I've also done a small little Renaissance fair in someone's backyard. There was probably 15 people there. I've done a wedding reception. I've done a Halloween festival that a hotel was running before. For the most part, larger organisations, I suppose.
Now, you mentioned before two things. One about the fire breathing, so that's where they have the accelerant or whatever, the fuel in their mouth, is it? And then they spit it out and set that on fire, so that's pretty dramatic. And so do you do that as well?
No, I have no desire to poison myself. It's definitely one of the more dangerous things, partially because there's fire much closer to your body, and to the liquids we use and the chemicals we use, you have to use very specific stuff for it. And it's still not good. You got to brush your teeth for a week afterwards to get rid of the smell. I know someone who had to get their stomach pumped by doing it once. It's not for me. Yeah,
not your thing. What about the fire eating? That's a different thing again.
Yeah, that one I'd
put something into your mouth and. Do you get burnt by that? Like, how does that work?
That's one I'd love to learn. I know the theory behind it. I know how it works. Maybe I shouldn't part the veil too much, but
trickery, is there?
Well, there's definitely a technique to it. If you do it correctly, you shouldn't get burnt. Is the short version. It's something different. I'd love to learn how to do it. I just haven't put the time into it yet.
Yeah, and I can't imagine, like, when you're learning to do something, anything, you hurt yourself, and that one's a big hurt.
Yeah, that is one of the things, the old adage, if you play with fire, you're going to get burned. I certainly do burn myself when I practice every now and then. I've been doing this now for about 14 years, when maybe 10 or so years ago, I would probably burn myself every second time I practiced. Nothing severe ever. I burned myself in my kitchen, one much worse. But if you... And it sort of comes down to how quickly you want to learn and how much you want to try new things. I'm constantly trying to do dumb things, I guess, and so I burn myself more than the average person.
What sort of dumb things are you doing? Like, riding a unicycle with flame or something and juggling that, or what?
Oh, just throwing it up in the air and hoping that it's going to be in the right place when I catch it, and trying moves I've not really practiced before without fire. Obviously, anything you want to try with fire, you should try without fire. But sometimes I'll just see something and think, oh, I'll give it a go. So I'm not really. I've never really gotten any training. I sort of just taught myself, and so I've never really gone for a routine. You'll find YouTube videos that'll say, okay, if you want to put your hand like this and hold it like this and move in a certain direction in a certain way, and if you follow those instructions, they're sort of designed to keep the fire away from you, and you're not going to burn yourself. But I don't follow those instructions. I see a move, and I'm like, I'm going to give that a go, and then I burn myself, and I'm like, oh, okay, well that wasn't right. But yeah, I've honestly never burned myself severely.
Right, the things you can learn on YouTube, how to change the chain on a chainsaw, how to be a fire twirler.
There's a lot of content out there for this flow artist stuff. It's become much more massive over the last couple of years.
Is it? Why would that be, do you think?
Possibly COVID, because it is definitely something you can practice inside. Not the fire version, obviously, but realistically, fire or no fire, the skills are pretty much very, very similar. So yeah, I guess that's a part of it. It's something you can practice in your backyard alone or at home. It's something that you can video yourself doing and post online and show all your friends that, oh, look what I'm doing, look what I'm trying. And I don't know, it's just getting, the more people who do it, the more people who see it, the more people who want to try it. So I suppose it grows naturally in that way.
Is there much of a fire twirling society here in Toowoomba, or?
There is a group. Yep, there is a group of us. So we've got a Facebook page called Turned Up Toowoomba. TURNT. TURNT.
Turned up. Bit like burnt.
I hadn't thought about that. No, yeah. So again, we're mostly hobbyists. We sort of catch up every second week and just have a go, play around, listen to music. We have a group of drummers who often join us too.
So where, you get together in the park and you can do the fire in the park? Right.
Yep. Yeah, we get together in Queen's Park every second week.
Okay.
Yeah, up on the north part.
Do you tend to attract a crowd when you're doing that?
Not usually a crowd. There's often passers-by who'll sort of, some of them continue to walk and sort of watch us as they walk along. Some will stop and, take photos. Some will stop and ask to have a go. It's very rare that people will sort of gather and, conglomerate around us, I suppose, specifically to watch. They usually, they're on a walk or something, so they'll go along, stop for a few minutes and continue on. Usually around Christmas, we gather crowds because there's a lot of people in the park heading towards the lights and everything else.
A free show. It sounds
yeah.
I'll just remind the listeners that you're on Big Little Small Talk, and we're talking to Tyrone Phillips, who is a fire twirler. We were talking just before about the Polynesian art of fire dancing and drums and things. So why do you think, because there seems to be these, the Samoan and the Tahitian and the Hawaiian style of fire dancing, why do you think it's come out of there? Do you know anything about the history of that?
I don't know a lot about the history of the fire aspect of it, honestly. I guess it was just available. It was an art form they could do. They had access to. A lot of sort of, obviously some locations aren't great for it. Rocky mountainous places aren't great for it. Places with lots of trees and foliage aren't great, and beaches, I guess, are fine. Most of the sort of history I know of it is to do with the actual implements and the toys and the props we use, where they sort of come from. So a dragon staff, for example, is one that I love a lot. That's based on a Chinese trident that is used in performances. They don't use fire over there in the Chinese trident performances, but yeah. So where the fire part comes from, I don't know.
We'll go back to the things that you use in a minute, but I was reading that this ancient tradition of fire dances was often to do with pre-battle rituals with warriors, and you mentioned it before about the drum beat. So I mean, it's so emotive, isn't it? The sound and the sight and the smell and all of that. I suppose it's the big G up when you're just about to go into battle.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah. One of my favourite shows I've ever done was at a Glen Innes Celtic festival, and we had a guy on some bagpipes and a guy on a drum and someone on something else. And there would have been, I don't know, 15 sort of fire twirlers just wandering around this massive bonfire with this booming sort of noise in the background. It was amazing. Yeah.
Have you ever been to Woodford for the fire festival? That's on New Year's Eve, isn't it? Or New Year's Day, I think, that they have the fire. I don't think I've ever been there, but I've seen some photos. It's amazing. Yeah.
No, I'd love to. I'd love to go to one of those things, but I haven't been to that one. No. It's on my bucket list.
You're probably working the whole time when you're, if you're doing a show of your own on New Year's Eve. So let's go back to the implements. So, you know, you sometimes think of the sword or the you know, that fire eating, and then I think that New Year's Eve show I saw you, did you have like a chain with 2 balls on the end that you were had lit up, or is that what sort of implements do you use?
That would have been the lady I was working with, Whisper. So those are called poi, and essentially, it's just a chain with a wick on the end of it, essentially. So staves are pretty common, pretty easy. I use 1 staff or 2 staffs, 1 in each hand. I also use something called devil sticks, which I mentioned before. They're also called flower sticks or trick sticks, where you'll be juggling 1 stick between 2 other sticks. Hard to explain, easy to show. I've got a dragon staff, which is a big long staff with large weighted ends, either in spirals or with wicks coming off them, which let them roll down your body and carry a lot of momentum. Personally, that's all I have, but there's people in town who have fire hoops, so hula hoops with fire coming off them, or fans. I've seen fire juggling balls before. I've seen fire Diablo, which are those ones we all tried as a kid with the string and the sticks. Bits and pieces. There's a lot of equipment out there. Swords, like you mentioned, someone in town recently got a sword. Very exciting. They're different. They're different.
What about a fire umbrella? What does that look like? What part's on fire with that?
That's one I've not tried. I've not seen one of those before, honestly.
No. Well, neither have I.
It sounds really exciting. I mean,
you won't be surprised.
I've got some wicks around here. Maybe we can give it a go.
Oh no, not right now. And it's not a good thing for radio either. But,
yeah, unfortunately.
That's right. So how does you know, we talked about how you got into it. Your mum brought it home. For you, it's a creative outlet? Like, are you creative in your other life, Tyrone? What else do you do that's creative like that?
That's a good question. I suppose it is, a creative way, and it's a sort of in some way fitness as well, in some way flexibility, in some way keeping my body limber and being able to do what it does, I guess. In terms of other creative arts sort of things, not a hell of a lot, honestly. I play a lot of tabletop games, board games, card games, that sort of thing. You know, I love listening to music, but I don't really make music or make art or make anything like that. So no, it's really the only big creative thing in my life, I suppose.
What about Wordle? Are you into Wordle?
Wordle? No, I've tried it once, but no, not for me.
What board games do you love?
I've got a small collection, I suppose.
What's your favourite? What's your go-to?
My favourite of all time might be Hero Quest, but it's not a good game, but it's got a lot of nostalgia in it, you know.
Okay.
But,
what about Scrabble? Are you a big Scrabble man? Maybe if you're not a Wordle fan, you wouldn't be a Scrabble fan.
I've definitely played it, but no, I like more modern board games. I've got a group of my friends of mine, and we're starting to play a game called Betrayal at House on the Hill every second week, which is sort of like exploring a haunted mansion sort of thing.
Is it an actual board game, or is it something online?
No, it's a board game. Yep.
Right.
We get little tiles and build a little haunted house and explore it, and try not to, betray each other too much. I play a card game called Magic the Gathering, usually once or twice a week, which is sort of similar to Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh! Or any of them. I play role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons every now and then.
And you told me just before we started the interview that you had a Dungeons & Dragons radio show in Armidale when you were going through uni. Tell me about that.
Yeah, many years ago. So I think it was on a Wednesday from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. or some...
So it's a real graveyard.
Yeah, some horrendous time shift. Yeah. We were live on air every second week. It was a lot of fun. Just
explain to people older people. I may or may not be one of those, but exactly what Dungeons and Dragons is.
So it's what we call a role-playing game. You create a character. It could be a barbarian or a wizard or whatever, and you basically choose what their character's going to do, act out the things they're doing, and roll dice to see if they succeed. So you might have someone who is sort of creating. You'll have a dungeon master who's creating a world for your characters to explore, and they might say, you're walking through the forest and there's a cave. Would you like to go into it? And if you go in the cave, you might find some goblins. And I don't know. I'm not very good at explaining it honestly, but there's a lot of podcasts and a lot of media out there about it. But it was a lot of fun to run.
How do you do it on air?
So theatre of the mind is a powerful tool in these role-playing games. So sometimes you'll have an actual physical board, but many people don't. So it's sort of just your imagination. And in that sense, the players weren't really getting any less than the listeners, I guess. There was no physical aspect of it the listeners were missing out on. So we were just sort of rolling dice, and one person, or me, was telling the players what they found and what happened, I suppose.
How was your listenership? Do you know?
Very good, surprisingly. So I never saw the numbers, but I was always told there was always a spike when we went on. My greatest regret in life is we lost all the recordings at the very first episode.
Oh, it's a bit like the countdown, the early countdown years.
Yeah, unfortunately. So the first episode's definitely out there somewhere.
Oh, well, if there's anyone out there from our brethren community radio people who can find, what was the show called?
I think it was Adventures in Westfall or something very vague like that.
Oh, that sounds unbelievable.
Yeah.
So what were you studying when you were at Armidale?
Civil engineering, and I'm still studying it now. I think I'm 8 years into a 3-year degree now, so I must be getting close to the end of it.
Have you been working the whole time?
For a large part of it, yeah. The first 2 or 3 years I was studying full-time, part-time, and then I got a job. I got a job as a tip worker sorting recycling, and another job as a support worker looking after a disabled guy. And then I've sort of moved around, and once I got to Toowoomba here, I got a job with the local council full time.
Okay. What's the plan with the civil engineering? Is it do you see yourself doing that as a full time job, or do you think, and fire twirling? Do you have any desire to go and be a creative person or a fire twirler in another life? Or another portal, you would say, wouldn't you, in the modern parlance of, is that right?
I suppose.
No, you're looking at me like I'm not making any sense.
I know what you mean. Well, I've definitely, so engineering is the number one pick. If engineering falls over, quitting work and joining the circus as a fire twirler is definitely number 2. I have a few other things I'd like to do afterward if that doesn't work, but I'd love to be able to run events and manage events, that sort of thing. I do a lot of that in my spare time as well. But fire twirling, I'd love to do it full time, but I think I would need a manager. I'd need someone to find me shows and to advertise better for me and get me a bit of a social media presence, I suppose, more of a social media presence. Because I'm not great at that stuff.
Like most artists, they're not really good at self-promotion, are they?
They're
more into their art.
Yeah, we just want to do it.
Exactly, and have someone else sort of do all of the boring stuff. So we were talking about how you got into fire twirling. So did you grow up in Toowoomba or? No,
my parents have very itchy feet. They can't stand still for very long. I've never lived anywhere more than about 5 years.
What sort of work were they doing that they were moving around so much?
Everything. My dad has flown planes, driven buses, managed an Aboriginal community, managed a small hippie store. My mum sort of done half of those things and more. She was running a women's centre out in WA at one point. She was running a home daycare business at one point. So whatever they felt like is what they were doing. But yeah, I was born in Cairns.
You were born in Cairns. So did that? Do you think did that ever create any tension between them? Did they both have the equal amount of itchy feet and wanted to move on?
Absolutely, yeah. They even today they just bought a camper van last week, and they want to. They're very. My dad's I think a week or two from retirement, and they want to just travel the country together, and so they're not stopping anytime soon.
And did you like moving around like that, or did you find it difficult? You often talk to kids of army or military. And some kids love it because it meant that they went somewhere new all the time, and it made them very resilient and made them able to make friends very easily. Was that your experience, or did you sort of feel like, oh no, we're moving again?
It sort of started out as the oh no, we're moving again, and grew more and more into the resilience, I suppose. Yeah, I definitely didn't love it when I was younger. It definitely was annoying, always having to move and make new friends and find new things to do and get used to new places. But yeah, now I'm definitely looking back at it and happy that we did it, I guess, because I am good at talking to strangers and making new friends and trying new things. And I've lived in a lot of places and I've seen a lot of cultures. I think before I was 18, I probably went to 5 or 6 different countries, and I spent 4 years of
some of those experiences.
Well, I spent 4 years of high school over in Ireland. My dad is Irish, so I've got an Irish passport, makes things very easy. And that was very different. The schooling system.
What part of Ireland were you in?
Down the south in Cork. My dad was born in Dublin, I think, but he moved over here when he was 4 years old, so he basically is Australian as you can get. And then we went over there for a holiday and stayed for 4 years.
Really? So tell me how that happened. So you didn't come back?
We're here now.
No, but like you got over there for a holiday and your parents just decided, well, we're going to stay here now.
We did come back, but basically during that holiday they sort of decided they wanted to live there. So we came back,
got some stuff,
sorted everything out, finalised whatever, and packed up and moved over there. Yeah, so my cousin at the time was running a small store which sort of sold a lot of fair trade gear, so clothes, beanies, scarves, anything fair trade, I suppose. And she needed someone to manage the store while she gallivanted around the world buying stuff. So she would go to Bolivia and go to the Bolivian women's prisons and buy the things that the people in there were making. And she would go to South America and she'd go to Africa and she'd go all of these places and find the people making stuff and bring it back to Ireland and sell it in the store. So she needed someone to manage the store.
So what year are we talking then? What years was this?
This would have been my 4th year of high school we got there. So what's that year?
You're like around 15 or something like that.
Yeah, probably 15. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah.
So who else in the family is there, Tyrone, besides you and your mum and dad? Do you have any brothers and sisters?
I have one brother, but he's much older than me. He's 14 years older than me, so he moved out of home when I was like 2 or 4 years old.
Okay.
So he stayed in Cairns, and so my parents did the same thing to him that they did to me. They wandered around the countryside, so as soon as he left home, he's never moved, basically.
Oh, really? Interesting, right. He's really stayed put.
Yeah, actually, we have the exact same story. So he was at his girlfriend's house and came back home, and there was a for sale sign outside Mum and Dad's place. And they did the same thing to me. I was off at uni, I came back and they're like, we're moving. I should have seen it coming.
Yes, like if you learn anything from history, they wouldn't do it again. Why was there such a big break between you two? Do you know?
My mother was told by the doctor that she'd never have another child. And, surprise.
Yeah, right. And so it didn't slow them down. They kept up the same patterns of moving around.
Yeah.
And what's your memories of living in Ireland?
Very cold. I definitely walked to school in the snow once or twice. It's a very different culture. It's very small. Everything's very close together. All the little hamlets are sort of gathered around central points, and all the buildings are directly next to each other. They live in a lot of terraced houses, so they're literally wall to wall. I don't know. It's just a different place. People see things in different ways. I remember a lot of older buildings, a lot of older roads, a lot of older infrastructure, green mossy hills and sheep. Different food, different people. Cork is a very, very pretty laid back, I suppose, sort of place. They sort of think of themselves as the rebels of the country, so they're always trying to avoid government and trying to avoid the law and everything else, but not in a bad way, more of like a... we won't bother getting a permit for our bonfire or whatever, or TV licenses or whatever.
Right, yeah. So as opposed to sort of like the IRA in the north around Dublin and all of that, did you have much contact with anything to do with the troubles in the north and anything like that?
No, never an issue at all. We travel around, as you know, my parents can't stop moving, so we pretty much visited everywhere in Ireland. We went to Dublin, we went up to north, County Tyrone, definitely went there.
Oh yes, the namesake, yeah.
Yeah.
So you lived in Ireland. What other countries did you live in?
That was the only other country I've lived in, but I've travelled a lot of other places. We spent a week in India, in Goa. Spent a couple of weeks in Scotland with a cousin of mine who's a mathematician out there. We were only supposed to stay there for a week, so we had this grand plan when we moved back to Australia. We're going to fly from Ireland to the mainland Europe and then take a train all the way through China and Russia and down to sort of northern Southeast Asia and then fly to Australia. And on the very first leg of the journey in Scotland, my dad fell down 2 steps, not flights, just 2 steps, and broke a tendon in his knee, and we stayed there for 6 months or something.
Oh, wow.
So I was in Scotland for a while.
So what did you do? Did you go to school there, or?
No, this was, I think it would have been during the school holidays, so maybe it wasn't 6 months, maybe it was 3 months, but it wasn't long enough to have to go to school or anything.
About going to school.
Yeah. Other places I've been, spent a week in Cambodia, which I got to say, the nicest people in the world I've ever met are in Cambodia. It's an amazing country with a horrendous history, and the people there are just so thankful to be there, I guess. And I've been to a few other little places in in Asia. I've been to Japan. I'm trying to think of where else I've been. I've done a lot of stopovers in Dubai and Amsterdam and wherever else.
And your parents, when they're sort of on this wanderlust traipsing around, do you ever remember sort of them saying, "And what do you think, Tyrone? Are you you keen on doing this, or was it sort of, well, love, we're ready"?
Yeah, I had no say in it. Never.
No, they sound like very interesting people, your parents. I'd love to meet them sometime. They sound like they're very interesting.
Yeah. They're hoping to move to Toowoomba in the next couple of years once they get sick of their caravan. So we'll see.
Well, we'll like to hear them, like to hear their stories. So I suppose the obvious thing is with your fire twirling. We'll just go back to that briefly. Have you had any serious injuries? You said you haven't really hurt yourself too badly.
No. I'm trying to look for burns on my hands right now. No, very old ones. No, I've definitely had burns that have sort of hurt for a couple of days or a week or something, but no.
Tell me about the LED things. What is that? What are you doing with that now?
So I have a new staff came out of the Ukraine just before everything happened over there, so they're hard to get these days. It's got 576 LEDs on it. It's fully programmable in that I can put any shape or image into it. And it again is a dragon staff, so it's sort of it's imagine it's sort of a staff rolling down your arms, and on the ends is a big image, I suppose, that's spinning around essentially. And it's again, it's one of those things that's just you can't really explain it. So definitely, all the listeners, look up dragon staff on YouTube or even LED dragon staff, and you'll sort of get an idea of what it is. But yeah, essentially. It's something that I can do indoors. It's something I can do during the day, or in a place where there's fire just wouldn't be possible if there's a fire ban on or something. And it's fully customizable, so I can put a company's logo on there, or I can sync it up to music to change colors whenever a beat hits or something.
What's the reaction? Have you done it in a professional sense yet?
Not yet. I've only had this thing for a short amount of time.
Yeah, but you love it, do you? Yeah. I was just wondering whether a crowd just loves the danger of the fire, that you possibly might get hair on fire or something.
That's definitely a part of it. Oh yes, that's definitely a part of it. One of the most popular props I have is my double staves, where I've got 2 sticks in one hand, or 2 sticks in 2 hands. And the reason for that is just because there's more fire, quite frankly. It's not a very technically challenging or technically impressive thing, but yeah, there's a lot of fire and people like it for that, I suppose.
Like the fire. More
so
fire!
Yeah,
more
so
fire.
the LED stuff, I don't know, it's pretty impressive. It's impressive in a different way, I guess.
Yeah, I understand, yeah. I'll just remind the listeners that we're on 4DDB and we're in our segment called Big Little Small Talk, where someone tells me their interesting story. And today, Tyrone Phillips, who is a fire twirler and an engineer, or going to be an engineer, and a lot more besides, is telling me all about the world of fire twirling.
It's an interesting one. It
is. One more thing I wanted to ask you, just going back to the games. We are jumping around here a bit at the moment. But my husband's work, they wanted to go to the safe room. Do you do that?
I've never tried one of those, but I'd love to. Yeah, those escape room sort of things. Yeah.
Is it called the escape room or the safe room?
I think the safe room might be the specific one we have. I think they're generally called escape rooms, but they all have different names. So the TikTok room or whatever. Yeah, I'd love to try that.
You might just explain to the listeners, because it does sound sort of something that's sort of slightly creepy, but it's not something creepy. Exactly what it is.
My understanding is, so you and a group of friends will go to this place at you book a session in essentially.
And there's one in Toowoomba, yes.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Margaret Street, I think.
Yeah, and it's sort of designed to be a bunch of puzzles. So it might have like a theme, might look like a haunted house, or might look like a spaceship or whatever. And you'll have to go from room to room solving puzzles. And once you solve the puzzle, the door will open, or you'll get a certain object or something. And so I think it's just like a group puzzle solving exercise in a very themed area. It sounds like a lot of fun to me.
Yeah, yes. What about the place upstairs in Ruthven Street where you can go there and play games all together?
Battle Station?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's my home away from home.
Right, so tell me what goes on there. People, it's another world to me.
Yeah. So this place is, it's kind of hard to find. It's just like a glass doorway in Ruthven Street, like you say, sort of opposite Gelatissimo. But yeah, a lot of tabletop games there. So a lot of people are playing what they call war games, where you'll set a bunch of miniature things up and roll some dice and move things around and fire guns or whatever. Like you're basically simulating two armies fighting, I suppose. A lot of role-playing games like this Dungeons and Dragons happen there. They've got a separate area for that. Card games like Magic the Gathering, which is what I play, or there's one called Flesh and Blood, which is getting more popular. And of course it's a store as well. You can buy hundreds of board games or cards or miniatures or paints. Painting miniatures is a massive thing. And some very, very skilled people. They've got all these cabinets of sort of painted miniatures, and when you say miniatures, they're like little miniature figures. They're not miniature paintings. Yeah. Miniature figures. Yeah. So there'll be a lizard man or an orc or something, or a human or whatever. And someone's got this tiny little paintbrush, and they've put tiny little eyes on it and put a lot of little details. And there's some incredible artists, honestly, in town for that sort of stuff. I've tried it before.
It's just another world. Whatever happened to going to the pub?
Too noisy.
And much healthier the life you're living than going to the pub and seeing bands, I think. Yeah.
Not necessarily cheaper, honestly. Some of these games can be pretty expensive to keep up with, I suppose. Yeah, the war games especially, they're very, very expensive. And card games can be as well, definitely.
So tell me, is it mostly blokes at these things, or any women?
Yes and no. It is mostly men. That's probably, maybe 80%, 70%, something like that. But it depends on the hobby. So wargaming is, I want to say wargaming is more women than men. Sorry, more men than women for the majority. Dungeons and Dragons role-playing games, maybe 50-50, honestly, they're pretty close. Card games, probably, 70-30, maybe more, maybe less. It is definitely a male-dominated thing, but it's a pretty welcoming space, honestly. I don't know if women aren't interested in it because it's perceived as a male sort of hobby, or maybe I'm not really sure. Maybe just the males are more interested in sitting down and painting little eyes on men. I'm not sure.
So when you say you're simulating the war games, I have a picture of, like in the movies when they used to get those little silver things and move them like a little shovel and move that one over here. And is it a bit like that?
It's not dissimilar. So yeah, essentially, I don't have a huge amount of experience, but like, let's say you'd get 5 little figurines and you'd put them on a board, and your opponent would put theirs on a board as well, and then you'd take turns moving one piece and rolling dice, and they might have certain abilities. This one might have a knife, and this one might have a jetpack and whatever else, and they can do specific actions, I suppose. And yeah, you just roll dice and hope for the best and use strategy. A lot of them are sort of not grid-based, I suppose, as you might expect a board to be, but they're more measurement-based, so you might be able to move 8 inches or something per turn, but essentially, similar enough to those sort of old war games you see in movies.
What about chess? Are you a chess man?
I think I've played chess maybe 10 times in my life, and I've won none of them but I know how to play
Didn't
it.
grab you.
No,
Okay.
never did.
All right. As per usual, I always seem to run out of time listening to the strange world of other people. It's not strange, but great.
Unusual.
Don't let me say unusual yet. What about books? Are you a book reader?
I used to read a lot of books
What's
when I
the
was
last
younger.
good book that you read?
The last good book that I read was one called The Magic Goes Away by Larry Niven. He writes a lot of sci-fi, and this is one's about, wizards and fantasy, and it's a kind of an allegory for global warming, I think, honestly.
Interesting. Okay. The sound of it doesn't surprise me from what I've learnt of you so far.
Yeah.
I mean that quite genuinely. If you were a circus if you were in a circus, and you did say, funnily enough, before that you were going to run away and join the circus, but if you were in a circus, which character would you be? If it isn't the obvious answer as the fire twirler.
Surprisingly, it's not the obvious answer. Ringleader is where I would want to be. I'd want to be the person, ladies and gentlemen, be heartlessly welcome. I want to, introduce people. I want to grab a crowd. That's what I want to do.
So interesting. Such a big pair of stripy trousers and a top hat.
Yeah, if I haven't got a top hat, it's not really a ringleader, is it? Yeah, absolutely.
Terrific. And I suspect, well, you said you own a top hat, don't you? So you're halfway there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. I just got to get the trousers now.
That's right. All right. What about social media? I would imagine as a young person you'd be into your social media. Have you ever stalked someone on social media?
Oh, every now and then I check out people's, posts and photos if I meet someone new or someone joins a group or whatever. But not specifically. Not too deep.
Stalking.
No, I guess not. I've never stalked a famous person or anything either, or kept track of their movements. No, not really. Yeah. Not really.
You don't go down too many rabbit holes.
No.
Yeah, the temptation's there, though, isn't it?
Oh, I'm too busy. I don't have time.
Lucky you. Slightly more serious one. What about the biggest risk you've ever taken?
Probably fire twirling on top of a truck. So it was during a barbecue festival. I was hired by one of the meat vans to do some fire twirling, and they said, "Well, we've got a ladder and we've got a truck. If you want to get up there, feel free." And I definitely took it pretty easy. I didn't do anything too risky while I was up there, because if I drop something, then it's gone.
So would that be your craziest event you've ever done, or what's the best event you've ever done, or the one that you've loved the most?
Craziest that was, I guess, yeah. The best one, honestly, I've really enjoyed the New Year's shows we've done here, just because the setup and the people we do it with. Working with other performers is the best kind of shows, and those have been some of my duo performances, I guess. Yeah, it's great to be able to bounce off people.
You're bouncing off the other person. Do you rehearse and have a format of what you're going to do? Absolutely,
and the more people you work with, the more people you have to do it with. If you're just doing on your own, it's not so necessary. But yeah, absolutely.
You have to be coordinated, I guess.
Especially with this LED stuff, I'm definitely putting a lot of work into rehearsing some of that.
Okay, great. What about the time when you've been most happy, Tyrone?
That'll be today, only surpassed by tomorrow, or maybe the day I finish my degree.
So why today? You mean you're an optimist? You
basically.
You take every day as it comes?
Yeah, basically, yeah. I'm a pretty happy part of my life, and I can only can't see it getting worse.
You're not looking in the rearview mirror, you're looking ahead.
Yeah, basically.
What a great thing to say. What an optimistic sort of way to live your life. This is the best day I've had so far.
Works for me.
Yeah, it's terrific. Now, I might be a totally, different. You've talked a lot about sort of kings and stuff, but I do ask this question of all my guests about which is their most favourite royal. Now, it doesn't have to be a British one, doesn't have to be living. So, a royal, do you have a favourite royal?
Can it be fictional?
Of course.
Then Prince Humperdinck from The Princess Bride, for being a fantastic villain.
Okay. And what is The Princess Bride?
It's a movie from, I think it was the 80s, maybe 90s. It's a great fantasy movie. Everyone should definitely watch it.
And why do we like Prince Humperdinck? The only Humperdinck I've ever heard of was who was the singer? Humperdinck, someone or other.
I'm not sure.
On 40dB will be able to tell me who that is. But he's had the name Humperdinck. So
he's just a great villain. He's just easy to hate, I suppose, and drives the plot. And he's just a villain that you love to hate. It's a great movie, especially it's got Andre the Giant in it, so he's a sight to behold.
Yes, the ex-wrestler, wasn't he?
The massive, huge person. Yeah,
yes, he had a few problems, poor old Andre, didn't he? And
he did,
I saw
yeah.
a documentary about him just recently. But King Humperdinck.
Prince Humperdinck, yep.
Prince Humperdinck.
Yep.
Okay.
Otherwise, Lizzie's pretty great. I like her. I like her costumes and her dresses.
You like her dresses?
She's fantastic, yeah.
Have you been addicted to the television over the last couple of days with the Platinum Jubilee?
Didn't even know it was happening.
Oh my Lord, Tyrone! What's wrong with you?
My TV isn't actually connected to the TV. I don't keep track of the news and current events.
It's such a young person thing, and that's fair enough too. All right. What's the song that can't keep you off the dance floor, Tyrone?
The song that I'm currently trying to choreograph my LED stuff to, which is called Ghost Spores by a guy called Varian, and wonderful vocals by a lady called Laura Bream. Ghost Spores.
Ghost Spores. I'm not sure whether Patty's going to be able to find Ghost Spores.
Oh,
we
it's on
usually
Spotify.
play a little bit of the song, but why do you love that song so much? Is it it's going to be a good thing to do your moves to
essentially, yeah, just haunting vocals, a great build up into an amazing release, I suppose. And the vocals, I love the vocals of it. The beautiful
voice.
voice.
Haunting vocals, is it anything like Kate Bush, do you think?
I'm not sure who that is.
No, okay, that's a generational gap there. So where did you first hear this song?
I guess it would have been on Spotify. So I found the singer Laura Bream just through randomly listening to stuff on YouTube, and then I decided to listen to every song she sung because I loved her voice so much. And this one just struck a chord with me, and I added it to my fire twirling playlist.
Oh, fantastic. Have you got something coming up where listeners might be able to come and see? Have you got a gig booked soon, or?
Not specifically, not directly, but I am going to be working with a group called Lock and Key, who we're doing one show every month at the Powerhouse. Our next show is on the 25th of June, I think. Which is a neon themed show. I won't be performing. I'll be too busy selling tickets and running the ushers around, unfortunately. But I hope to perform with Lock and Key at some point in the future.
Okay. Oh, brilliant. I have not heard anything about that. And just that group, your group, where people can find, what is it, Turnt or Bird? No,
yeah, Turnt up to Womba. Yeah.
Turnt up to Womba.
And my personal fire twirling page is called Madcap Fire Twirling. Madcap.
All right.
Yeah,
okay.
Plenty of photos and videos in there if anyone wants to check them out.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there'll be lots of people who do, myself included. I might be one of those social media stalkers going out. Madcap? Mm-hmm. Not Sadcap. Madcap.
Madcap. Madcap.
Okay. Well, that's just been a trip into another world. I just love, particularly when I meet young people, I love, some of them sometimes tell me these things like, oh, I just sit there and I watch YouTube videos of someone polishing a pair of shoes or someone sewing something together. And I think, wow, it's just an incredible world out there.
There's a lot of media for sure these days. And if someone's doing something, then someone else is videoing it and someone else is watching it.
That is such a perfect way to end the interview. Tyrone, thank you so much for being my guest on Big Little Small Talk.
My pleasure.
That's it for this week. Thanks for joining me on Big Little Small Talk. I hope you can make the time to join me next week. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favourite podcast app.